You're up on everything.
Well, this seems too easy.
Sorry.
Really?
I'm sure, well, we might lose audio randomly again for
Knock on,
no apparent reason.
knock on cast iron.
Yep. Milled iron. Oh, yeah, there. That's see, we
Yeah.
got audio.
Okay, good.
Come on now. There.
All right, so looks like we're up and running. Welcome everybody. 034 live chat 62. Welcome again. I think we're up on all the different platforms.
Yeah,
so
everything
people
so
are
far.
trickling in.
Yep, looks good.
So I had a birthday this weekend. It was really fun. Thank you
Yep, happy
to
again.
many of you who wished me happy birthday and fighting off the years, but it was fun. So, and we had a little barbecue after work on Friday. That was really cool. All right. So as always, this is a question and answer session, an AMA, if you will.
Yep.
And of course, all topics like 034 Motorsport, products and services, our history, anything you'd like to know about Nate and I, any automotive topics you'd like us to weigh in on. We love controversial topics where we can kind of respond with a no bullshit type mentality. I think we're always willing to speak directly and honestly about anything that's asked. And even recently, we've had some people who were upset at us or thought we were doing something poorly, and we were able to respond to them as well. So this isn't just for people that love us. We're here to solve problems as well. So if you have a beef, feel free to throw it up here, and we will do our best to create a better outcome.
We're only human, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and we can't make it better if we don't know about it. So kind of sucks to hear about issues, but once it's out in the open, then you can fix it. So let's see. All right, let's get into some questions. Questions are rolling in. The B9 S4 community says that your tune is the most aggressive on the market and APR is a safer tune. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I keep seeing this come up, and I don't really know
We've addressed this.
where that comes from. It's usually not based on any kind of data. It's based on the perception of, well, the car's a little bit slower, so it must be safer. That's, not really anything you can put any kind of weight in. That's just a one metric of a difference in the tune and how it's acting that doesn't have anything to do with safety. It's slower isn't always safer.
Yeah, there's some idea that tunes are either aggressive or safe.
And we've talked about this a lot. We put a lot of time into optimizing these as much as we can. Sorry, the levels are a little crazy here. But we retain all of the factory safeties. We are
Actually better than APR.
I to my knowledge, yeah.
As far as I know.
There's nothing in there that we purposefully circumvent in any way that would make it less safe by any means. It's one of these things. I'd like to know why people think that there's safer tunes out there. If you're seeing, and it's a very hard thing to quantify from an end user. Basically, you're like, oh well, this tune has a way less knock, so it must be safer. What did the tuner do to the knock control? If you don't know exactly what was done,
you can dumb down the knock.
You can really neuter down the knock sensors in how much it reacts, what it's
or you can be overly retarded, which makes EGT skyrocket.
Or you can have no timing at all, which you don't get any correction on. That is a far less healthy tune for the motor. So there's so many factors that go into this, but we strive ourselves in trying to make the most optimized in every way calibration, and safety is a paramount consideration in that.
Yeah, I think Nate's main point is, based on what? And when you hear that, I would suggest saying, based on what evidence would you say that 034 Motorsport is not safe? Because if you look at the evidence out there and our track record, it's excellent. And actually, I think if you go back in other tuners' track records, you can see a lot more issues. In fact, we used to be an APR dealer, so we know all about that. But the correct way to put this is the 034 Motorsport tune makes the most power on the market, has the most performance on the market, and is a completely safe tune. Which means what Nate mentioned is we keep all the factory safety features and functionality intact. We don't fudge anything. We don't turn anything off. We don't dumb anything down. We simply scale all the safety systems up to deal with the new level of performance, which is really hard to do. And most tuners don't do that. It's easier to dumb down the ECU safety features so there isn't as much safety.
Yeah, you can go through and start turning off fault codes, start reducing, timing corrections, start, shutting modules off in the ECU, and
you can turn knock detection off.
There's a ton of ways you can go about making things look safer from the outside.
Yeah. So and I don't know, I don't agree that the B8 S4 community says that. I think there's probably
there's a handful of people that keep reiterating it.
Yeah.
Maybe they're running the APR tune and they think that's their rationale behind it.
There's nut swingers and stuff, and I guarantee you they have no idea what they're talking about. So that's why I would say, and just simply ask them for evidence.
Yeah, give us a metric, exactly what way, how does it make it safer? And they say, well, it's slower. That's not a metric. Or not a reason it's safer. That's just, I don't know. They did a worse job at something at some point. So.
Saying that our tune is not safe implies that there's something wrong with our tuning,
right.
That there's something that we haven't done. There's safety features we've turned off, and that's just not true.
Yeah, no. If there's ever a feature, a safety feature, a reliability feature, that is going to be paramount. In our considerations.
Of course.
The slowest car you're ever going to have is the one that has an issue and has a failure of some kind. So to make a fast tune, we have to make a safe tune.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is there's no reason to make a fast, aggressive tune that's just going to blow up. That's actually really slow.
That's the slowest you can be. Is stopped.
When your piston is melted and you're on the side of the road, that's not aggressive and that's not fast. We're not stupid. I mean, we're not going to sell a tune that does that. So and we try really hard to make sure that powerful tune that we put so much energy in will continue down the road so that it can continue to be fast on the road. Yeah. Cars are slow when they're broken down.
Yeah, and I don't, we don't have an acceptable failure rate. We everything we do, we strive to zero.
Yeah, we target zero failures. And, that gets muddied with an older car like this.
It does, and that was something I was just going to talk about. Is these things. People may say well, there's been issues with motors on your file. There's been issues with motors on every.
There's issues with B8 3.0 T's on stock tunes.
That's the thing is they're getting older and they're needing more maintenance, more upkeep, more particularly in the fueling system. We're finding more and more bad injectors these days, which are obviously critical to keeping things healthy. And in-house, we've seen stuff, come through with massively imbalanced injectors where you'll have some up, some high, some, incredibly low. But across that bank, maybe they're okay enough that it seems like it's a full bank trim a little bit here and there. And it's something that can be easily overlooked. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. There's a lot of hardware stuff that on these cars as they age and as people are doubling power levels, need to really be. Yeah.
So we have Sean, maybe you can share the last time we talked about this, that this comes up. But again, this idea that you can either be aggressive or safe is false. You can do both. You can, and I wouldn't even say we try to be aggressive. I don't even know what that is.
No, optimized. It needs to keep coming back to optimized. We're not trying to we're not, aggressive would be like gambling. Like maybe it'll survive this pull. Maybe, I don't know what you'd consider aggressive. But.
I don't know. It's like, imagine you're dating. Do you want to be known as the guy that's aggressive? No, you're the guy that's fun and is enjoyable to be with. That doesn't mean you're aggressive. And then if you're not fun, it means you're safe. I don't know. It's just kind of this weird concept that people have constructed here. So. That our tuning is designed and engineered to be optimal, so that means we can generate the most power and performance that's capable, all within this strict limit of you can never damage or hurt your motor. and that's kind of the final words.
Yeah, and we take, a lot of time and energy with every one of these calibrations as many times as possible to get them on track, to put them into these extreme situations that are hopefully
Of course.
as extreme
Yeah.
or more than,
Well,
than
that's
our customers ever would.
that's how we know it's safe.
Yeah.
Not only do we not compromise any of the safety functionality, but we test the hell out of it. So, and at this point, our BA tuning's been on the market for 5-6 years, and we have every customer that we've ever heard of that has had any kind of engine damage while running our tuning, we've contacted. Of the ones that it would respond to us, we've done deep technical dives with each one, and we actually have a spreadsheet where we track all this. And in every case where we've been able to speak to the customer, we've either determined what the mode of failure was, which was nothing to do with our tuning. And in some cases, we've actually paid the customers to ship the motors to us, and we've done postmortems and found what was wrong. And the one notable case is a high pressure fuel pump was poorly installed, an O-ring was torn, and this particular customer's crankcase filled with fuel.
Yep.
So they lost any.
That one was a cascade. Also, there was also bad injectors. There was also, and it was a 170,000 mile motor that went from stock to like stage 2+ in a day.
But we've seen no evidence yet that any of our tuning has damaged a motor because of the quality of our tuning. Right. So all right, let's move on. I spent too much time on that. What is it that the calibrators have to crack for new ECUs? Are they encrypted, or do they have different flash protocols you need to hack? Yes.
So yeah, this one I wanted to stick in here. And somebody else was actually asking me over the weekend that works here. It's like, hey, can I sit over your shoulder and see what you guys do to tune these ECUs? And I was just like,
no.
Yes, but no. It's just going to be. It's modern ECUs have so many different layers that you've got to deal with. Now, what this question kind of pertained to is a misconception I think a lot of people have, is that flashing, actually getting your stuff onto the ECU, is the hardest part. That is an extremely hard part. It has nothing to do with the calibration, and I would argue they're equally difficult, and they're completely different. Getting a flash loaded is basically that's basically where you're hacking at or finding a weakness in the security systems of the ECU to get around whatever signature verification or protections may be in place.
So, I mean, would you say this is accurate? There's three main areas generally, to oversimplify it, is accessing the mapping. So that's getting around the security and encryption. Then there's actually calibrating it, which is a certain amount of calibration expertise, but not necessarily, some hacking, but not as much. And then there's the flashing, how to actually put those files onto an ECU.
That's pretty. I mean,
those are the three main areas.
Yeah, and so let me start. I'll start with like getting something onto the ECU. So you've got to bypass whatever OEM security systems
being able to flash it.
They've implemented, which is a very reverse engineering at an assembly or a very processor specific level to try and work your way around whatever, and find an exploit or a bug in there.
This is because Bosch, Continental, Audi,
OEMs,
whoever, they do not
Volkswagens.
want anyone to be able to go into the ECU and touch anything.
Yep.
It's their thing. They're in control of it. And so every new ECU, every new generation has stricter and stricter encryption, like NSA level encryption.
There's 1000-bit RSA keys you're dealing with. There's multiple levels of checksumming and different unique proprietary methods of doing that for data validation and for it serves a couple of functions, but one of the primaries is it makes it incredibly difficult to change the software from anything that wasn't generated, built, and signed by the OEM manufacturer. Mm-hmm. Once you get all that figured out and you can actually start loading a file onto the ECU, then comes the task of you got to know what to load, which is also nothing you're going to have documentation for, and it's going to be literally you're staring at megabytes of bits, and you've got to discern how to interpret those and what those maps even mean, or what the maps are, what it even pertains to. And then you have to know how it all works together, and how the entire control strategy that the OEMs use exists. If I push the pedal this far, what's going to happen? What controls that? Well, nowadays it goes through like 15 layers of torque modeling to get you some sort of like cylinder pressure. You got to figure out how to get that cylinder pressure by how much, if it's a turbo motor, make some boost. Then how much ignition efficiency do you have to generate a certain amount of torque for that given amount of boost?
Substantially,
and it's a very circular logic, so you've got to figure out what manipulates what to get a given amount of power up.
it's substantially less user-friendly and more complicated than tuning a standalone, for example, which is designed to be like pretty user-friendly.
Yeah, and that all then comes back to, well, do you even know what you're trying to do? Which is where most people are even trying to start. It's like, hey, I've got a car, or I want to learn about this, and that's all. My answer now is buy an old car, late 80s, early 90s something, put a standalone on it, or figure out something that's already fully reversed and figured out, and you can either have a it's a learning tool.
There's a million ECUs now that are plug and play for like the B5 generation, Mk7,
or even up to stuff, but still it gets more and more complicated. You've got a very involved system you're dealing with.
But if you got like a B5 180 and you put one of these standalones in it,
that, or I mean, these days the ME7, so like what would be in a B5, that level of software is pretty well discussed openly. On
it's just you're gonna deal with more of the computer science side and less of the tuning and calibration.
Those are pretty well sorted out. You can do mostly just calibration on.
So there's like, you can just open a GUI and start playing with stuff.
Yeah. There's enough there that you can kind of start poking away at it, and then figuring out kind of the way the software works. There's enough, data sheets available these days and things that have just appeared on the internet that you can start there. But it's tough. It's a really difficult.
But that's just a quick. Nate could go all day.
Yeah.
But generally, there's those three areas. And so if you're a good tuner and calibrator, like you've been mapping Haltech and mega squared ECUs for 10 years, that doesn't mean you can do the other two at all. They're very, very different disciplines. And so, the other two areas are much more just hardcore computer programming and hacking and reverse engineering.
They're a much narrower scope, where it's like this manufacturer with this OEM. So like,
yes,
it's not even like, hey, I can tune Bosch ECUs. It's I can tune a Volkswagen flavored Bosch ECU of this generation. So they get incredibly specific.
Cool. All right. When will you be releasing numbers on the SüperDüper Charger?
Well, just on that point, we've already released as many numbers as basically every other.
Nobody else has any numbers. But
yes, we have power numbers coming.
You think maybe by the end of this week? Those will be available.
We had a ridiculous litany of just.
Well, speaking of the issues that B9 S4s have, we have like three of them here, and none of them were able to generate enough reliability for us to test.
Some are in states of different. Work or modifications or whatever.
One of them blew up their rear diff while we were in the middle of the test.
And then we're like, oh, good, this car's all set. We got everything ironed out. Again, it had injector issues. We got injectors in it.
It had all that.
We got, what else was it? It was literally like every little thing.
Another car has a blown engine because of injector issues.
That was an injector issue.
And then a third car has a blown engine. I don't know if we know why.
Oh, no, that was Catalyst.
That was Cats. Okay.
Yeah.
The engine's okay?
That was, I don't know yet. No, he had for quite some time some failed catalysts. I think it was a
sleeping oil out of all the rear seals.
And like some oil leakage and some other stuff going on. So the motor itself, I think it's okay at this point. The compression was good. Yeah. But,
cool. All right.
Yeah. So anyway, then we're all set. We're like, hey, great, motor's good to go. Let's get some numbers, and then the rear diff.
They were supposed to be done last week, but hopefully this week. But yes, Nate's right. I mean, we have as much data out there as anyone else. If you go by the CFM numbers alone,
right?
But there are gains, and
and we've got those numbers are really tough to quantify at that level. Like we said, it's not a huge gain, and to try and make sure you're isolating just that throttle body. Is really tough because we're talking like a handful of kPa difference behind the throttle plate. But we're working on getting new numbers.
Someone's asking, what is the advantage benefit of 034 sports springs for Mk7 GTI over other aftermarket reputed brand lowering springs? I feel like we've answered this so many times, so if you want to just grab a clip. But basically what we always say is here at 034 Motorsport, we are Volkswagen and Audi enthusiasts. we focus on Volkswagens and Audis. We're just starting to do some BMW stuff, but our entire universe is mostly Volkswagen and Audi. And so when we look to design a product for a Volkswagen or Audi model, we're not only doing it as experts, as a group of people with a tremendous amount of experience, um, and a very talented engineering team, but we're also doing it as enthusiasts. So we're not some company that sells like 5,000 different springs, and a GTI spring is just one of the springs. And actually, the GTI spring is the same as the Golf spring or whatever. So when we develop a spring for a Mk7 GTI, we design a set of springs for that car, with no compromises, and with the complete perspective of what would we want as Volkswagen product engineering experts and Volkswagen enthusiasts. And so that means, in addition to the technical work that gets done to make a car lower and handle better and still ride well, we're also a pretty big number of people who love driving Volkswagens are driving and testing these products and evaluating the final result. So we have an in-house Mk7 GTI here. It has our springs on it. The car is a freaking blast to drive. It rides really nice on the street, and along with some of our other products, it handles like a go-kart. So I drive all of these products. I test them. I give feedback. So I'm not sure if the CEO of H&R and Eibach do that for the GTI springs.
My guess would be probably not,
I
especially
don't think they do.
through the iterations.
Yeah.
We're not just like, oh, this spring fits, let's get it wound up and done. We will go through a number of iterations on every single spring kit that we do.
Yeah, we want it to be the best spring option in the market, and for us, it has to be, because we're not like, H&R has this amazing reputation, and the Tire Rack sells them, and Amazon, and we're just little old 034 Motorsports. So if we're gonna fit into that market with H&R, Eibach, KW, and literally 50 other spring options, we have to do something special to stand out. We can't just poop out another lowering spring that's 1.0 inches lower than stock. We have to really get it right. So I'm confident that if you buy our springs, you will love them. Our springs are very popular. We get excellent feedback from all the customers that buy them, and frankly, I could say the same thing about all our products, but specifically, you asked about springs. So.
Yeah, springs is one of those things where you can get like I don't want to degrade it too much, but the H&Rs and the iBox would be like the Walmart store brand versus like someone who actually specializes in
That's
what
right.
you're getting.
Yeah, it's
You could buy like
it's like Huffy compared to Specialized or something.
yeah, or some terrible oil versus like a Motul or something that's formulated for that car that at an OEM level.
Yeah, it's we curate these products. We don't just, again, we're not just cranking out stuff here just to get stuff on the market. We pay a lot of attention like an enthusiast would, and because we are enthusiasts. All right, there's some here. Let me just grab some of these other. Just move my just move my rear sway bar to the stiffer setting on an RS3. Why does the car now feel smoother and handles flatter? It seems counterintuitive. Okay, well, the reason it's handling flatter is because you've made the rear sway bar stiffer by increasing or decreasing the moment lever that the suspension has on the sway bar. So a shorter lever is going to require more force to twist the bar. And so that means that it will require more force for the car to lean than on the softer setting. So as a result, your car is leaning less because the same amount of force is applying on the sway bar, but it's now stiffer. So the body rolls less. This actually is intuitive, and what's happening is that the sway bar is in the stiffer setting, resisting your left and right side suspensions from being in different positions. Now, they're still in different positions, but if you kind of take this to its logical extreme, if you have an infinitely stiff bar that you connect to your left and right suspensions, then both suspensions will be locked and they will not be able to move.
In relation to roll of the body.
Yeah.
So that's
In
really
relation to the attitude
the
of
sway bar is trying to,
Yeah.
to control.
So the stiffer the sway bar is, the more it resists the body from rolling. The way the body rolls is by having one side of the suspension compress more than the other. So yeah, it's doing exactly as it should, and if that feels like better handling to you, great.
Yeah, and that's why it's adjustable. You know,
that's why it's
the
adjustable.
different vehicle setups, different tires, different driving situations may feel better in different positions. So you know, that's why there's some adjustment there.
Another question: what's the benefit of your rear sway bar being thicker than others on the market for the B8 S4? I mean, thicker. I mean, so the reason we do that is because everyone else offers a front and rear sway bar for the B8 S4. And so we found in our testing that we felt like the car handled best with just a rear sway bar and a stiffer rear sway bar. And that really gave the car a more handling attitude, more towards oversteer than complete understeer, which is the stock car.
And we should probably also note that the thickness of the bar has has very little to do with the overall thickness or the overall stiffness. You need to know, is that a solid bar? Is it a hollow bar? If it's a hollow bar, what's the wall thickness? So you gotta be careful there. You can get a bar that's 30% bigger than another that's softer than a solid.
To Nate's point, a 30 millimeter bar that's hollow with really long arms would be softer than our 25.4 millimeter bar. So, but our bar, if you look at the percentage stiffness increase, even if I don't even know if other companies publish that information, we do. So you guys can make a more informed decision when you purchase. But our bar is probably the stiffest on the market, because we did want to create a product that caters to people who are not only looking for flatter handling, but more of a lively handling attitude that's more towards oversteer under trailing throttle and trail braking conditions versus, for example, one of our competitors offers a full front rear sway bar kit, and that sway bar kit will reduce the body roll, but it will not change the handling dynamic of the car. So the car will still push, really bad with those sway bars. Generally you go into a corner, you turn the steering wheel, you don't want to do this. You want the car to turn with your steering input, and that's where the oversteer, that attitude towards oversteer or being looser helps.
Yep.
We got a lot of B9 ECU questions. Here's one. Let's just do this one. What symptoms would come with failing injectors on a B8 3.0T?
They can show up in a number of different ways. Usually what we see is you'll get some much more increased knock activity, especially if you're on like 91 or 93 on, some cylinders here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you'll get fuel trims will be pretty different bank to bank. But again, like an example we had in-house, we had injectors failing. We had a couple of them going down on each cylinder bank. So those weren't even that far off. There was just badness on both sides. But we were seeing a lot of knock activity and a lot of corrections being coming into play for that. So yeah, that's usually where you'll see it. You'll get these cylinders that are running very lean. So yeah,
and we can do
do
logging with you if you'd like.
Yeah,
and you can tell a lot.
Yeah,
you'll see stuff in logs.
Yep.
But I'd say at this point, I mean,
honestly,
would send every B8 3.0T.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the point where it's such a ubiquitous thing. We're just going to start telling people just replace your injectors. It's one of these things, like even cleaning them. We had a set cleaned that were really bad. They came back as okay. We put them in a car here, and that was still not good enough.
Well, the issue is the fuel injector places, they still test them at 3 bar.
There's that, so, and there may be something, they're able to test them in that environment, right, at 3 or 4 bar.
Yeah.
But when they're at full system pressure,
thousands of psi, the injector possibly acts different.
It's more than just dirty. Maybe it's got an actual actuator issue,
right,
which is being fully tested on when they're cleaned. So. Yeah, so we were hoping, just clean them, we'd be good to go. But at this point, I think if you have any kind of question about it, you should probably just swap them out.
Hey guys, for B8 3.0T, does gutting the cats eliminate the possibility of issues that happen when they get clogged fail the same way that getting test pipes do? Yes, for racing use.
Yeah, of course.
If you gut your cats, they can't fail.
Right.
The only thing that can fail inside the cat is the matrix, the stainless steel matrix that catalyzes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happens is that matrix breaks down. Will usually either kind of melt and fuse shut, or it'll break apart and kind of twist in there. So you're trying to breathe, or your engine's trying to breathe around all these literal like plugs in the exhaust. So yeah, of course, you remove all that and you've got a big empty hole in there. It's gonna flow, without any of the catalyst blocking problems.
Let's see. Can you run an upgraded crank pulley without an upgraded heat exchanger on a B8.5 3.0?
I mean, you can. It depends how big you're going. We don't really recommend going much over stage 1 without a heat exchanger.
And you probably shouldn't go to like Death Valley and try to.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. It really depends on
drag
your
racing
environment
there.
too,
Yeah.
and what you're doing with the car. But yeah, if you're looking for a couple of quick highway pulls, on-ramp stuff, whatever, it's not going to be sustained load for massive amounts of time. Yeah, you can get away with it.
Yeah. What is the limiting factor on 3.0 TFSI engines at this point? I'm assuming B8.
Yeah.
Seems no one is getting over about 550 horsepower. I mean, it's the head unit, right? The supercharger is a big part
kind
of
of
that.
everything is capping it. Unfortunately, we've got the supercharger's done basically. It's way outside of its happy efficiency
Like
range.
double of what it's designed for.
It's got the intercoolers can't keep up, both in flow and in cooling. So
That's a big
there's a
thing,
pretty big head pressure ahead of them because pressure drop across them, I guess is what I should say.
Yeah.
And the system's out of fuel, and there's just a number of things here that are kind of all stacking up. So yeah, that's why everything's kind of capped out there. There's
And a big issue is upgrading the supercharger is very expensive.
Right.
And I mean, 550 horsepower is still a lot of power.
yeah, and they're really quick.
These are like 10-second cars. So the B8 3.0T is in a good place where it's still quite reliable at that power level and quite easy to get that power.
Yep.
I mean, really not difficult at all. So we are looking at pushing these motors and applications to the next level. And I believe other companies are as well. But yeah, I think more and more we'll probably see some of the focus shifting to the B9 that companies like us are doing tuning, and this will be much easier with some relatively inexpensive turbo swaps. You could be into 600-700 horsepower range.
Yeah, the B8's an amazing package.
Yeah.
And we've kind of pushed that package as far as it can go.
And it works so well at 550 horsepower.
They're incredible.
Yeah.
Taking that next leap it's not a, I just swap a supercharger. I swap it comes with a full replacement of that package almost, where you've kind of got this core of a block that's now got rods, pistons, a whole new head unit, new intercoolers, new fueling. So it gets really, it's a really steep next step.
Yeah. So we have some B9 3.0T questions, and I think this would be a good time to mention that we will be releasing B9 Stage 2 tuning today. Very exciting. And on 91 and 93 files, we're seeing as much as 50 crank horsepower.
93 was pretty huge.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so there's some requirements for Stage 2. If you already own our Stage 1, it's a $100 upgrade to get Stage 2. But you will need an intercooler, an intake, and some kind of high flow downpipe.
Yep.
Now, if you want to simply do the intercooler and intake and stay on Stage 1, there are power gains there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the intercooler on those things is
So we will.
desperate need.
I think we'll be probably release some power figures, because all of our current numbers are on
completely stock hardware.
It's a stock car with just a flash for Stage 1. So for Stage 1 with, I don't know, and we might even call it 1 plus or something, but with the intercooler and intake, just on Stage 1, there's quite a bit of power that you gain. And then if you want to get the most, and we're basically at this point completely maxing out the stock turbo, you go to Stage 2 with our high flow cat. And others on the market would work too. And again, these are all for racing use only. Right. But the gains are quite big, and torque in the E85 is like 615.
It's bumped a bit. We're at the limit of basically fueling and where we just want to keep it.
We're not. We could get more than that.
Yeah.
We've kept it back at that level, but the horsepower is up, and 91 and 93 were very surprising.
Yep.
Huge gains.
Yep.
So yeah, very exciting. And I'm excited that we were able to back up our stage 1 with a stage 2 in about a month.
Yep.
So exciting time for B9 3.0T.
Yeah.
Someone's asking about Crackles.
Yep, those are going to be updated coming soon.
And we're continuing to update the file. So,
Well,
what you guys
we're
have is the very first.
Yeah, we're working on a bunch of, feedback and whatnot from the stage 1 file. So we've got a slew of updates coming that'll be in both stage 1 and stage 2.
Yeah.
So you'll see updates come across for stage 1, and that's just a quick refresh to get all those.
Yeah. All right, some more questions. Why does the torque curve on the 93 octane file for B9 3.0T come in so much sooner than 91 and on E85? Any concerns about generating so much torque at low RPM?
Yeah, I went back through and was looking at the plots. I think what they're talking about is literally just like at 2000 RPM on one of the plots it's coming up versus another one it's already there. That's literally just loading on the dyno and how those series of runs was done on the dyno. It's not the 3 liter is not, or the 93 file is not, making 500 foot-pounds more torque. It's literally, we're looking at like 2001 RPM. It's just going up. So it's just, that's just some inconsistency a little bit in how the dyno was actually generated. And for that octane.
This is I was talking to one of our dealers recently, and they were commenting on the same thing. Their dyno loads differently, and so they got some low RPM torque numbers that were different than ours. That area of the dyno testing in general is fraught with variations because this is when the boost is coming up, and this is when the turbo is just in its transition period of transitioning to its full flow capability. And so you're going to see a lot of variation from dyno to dyno, from test to test, at the very low end of the band. Now things will normalize more once the turbo's loaded, once the engine's revving. And even then you're going to get different loading, but the variations kind of stabilize out as you get past 4,000 RPM. But down really low, it's you're kind of in the
it's a really
noise
tough one to
floor.
normalize because you've also got torque converter action on a lot of these cars, depending on if it's an S4 or an SQ5. They've got a little bit different torque converter mapping. And that dramatically affects how it looks on a dyno, because you're basically multiplying torque there with some slippage in the converter.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that can, at the very leftmost of that graph that can affect the output. We could, fake all of our graphs and just make it the same across all of them, but these are generated off of the dyno.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some variance just in the way the testing works.
Nate's right, and this is what some other companies do, is they normalize and massage, and they create these advertised charts so that these kind of questions never get asked. And we give you guys, as real of data as possible.
Particularly also, I was looking back, one thing you got to look out for, I was looking between E85 and 93. The 85 file comes up the same, it's just a lot higher. So you got to look, and it's going to take the turbo and the engine just a little more time to reach that peak. So it may be that it looks like a softer slope, but it's actually already at the 93 level and more. It's just the turbo is coming up to steam there.
A turbo's ability to create boost is dependent on time, so it's always going to do it over a certain amount of time.
Right?
Which is the advantage of an electric motor. It's virtually instantaneous.
Or a supercharger.
Supercharger will increase boost as fast as the crankshaft can spin. So yes.
Stage 2 is now available.
Yep, it is.
Yep.
Okay, great. So stage 2 is now live on our site. If you'd like to purchase it, feel free to go look at the tuning page and Google all the data and charts and numbers. But yeah, the power gains are they're actually better than we expected.
They are. We actually picked up a good bit more than we thought.
So and again, it's with intercooler intake.
Right. Some of that is from the required supplemental modifications as well.
Yep. So yeah, very exciting. B9.5 tuning.
We're working on. We're doing some
on
more flash testing this week.
We've been getting feedback on the initial stage 1 file, and there's some drivability concerns that we've been working on addressing.
Yep.
So we did initially say it was going to be about a month, and it's been about a month, and we still don't have it. However, we've been doing nothing. We've been spending time.
We haven't been kicking back here.
Improving the file based on feedback from, when we test it, we can create a certain number of data points, but when we have 500 people running it now, we get a lot more data. And so we have been able to fix and address those issues.
Yep.
And I believe we're done with that, and we are now moving towards some of these other, including creating stage 2. So good news is all these things are going to benefit B9.5 owners as well. So it's not for nothing, and you will get a better, more refined file than the B9 got.
Starting point. Yeah.
Starting point.
Yeah. And these are pretty minuscule
Yes.
drivability things and nuances we're ironing out, and we just want to make sure we're not, hey, here's an update, here's an update, here's an update, here's an update. We're trying to kind of roll this all into a pretty holistic.
Yes. And none of the updates relate to safety.
No, it's all just
it's just smoothing
some
things
drive
out.
and feel kind of stuff.
Yeah. Any opinions on high flow cat versus catless for stage 2? We strongly recommend high flow cat. There's going to be no power difference by going catless, and catless is very polluting, is more noxious, is louder and noisier, and so the high flow cat, again, for racing use, is going to create like the smoothest, most refined racing experience possible. But you're going to get black soot on your bumper, and you'll be sitting at stoplights. It's noxious if you have your windows down, even if they're up. So, and there's really no benefit.
Yeah, there's no reason to really do that.
They also don't sound very good. And they give the engine kind of a glug glug sound. So having a little that high flow matrix there, it still muffles the exhaust a little bit. But keep in mind, like our high flow cat matrix it's about 8 inches in diameter, so there's a lot of flow surface area there. And actually, for anyone who wants to stay stage 1 and stock cat, there's still plenty of power to be made by just doing the intercooler.
Oh yeah, do intake and intercooler, and you're going to pick up. Yeah, like Joe had mentioned, we'll work on getting some more numbers published for those hardware mods.
Yeah.
Because it is pretty substantial. Just keeping those air temps in check. Uncorking the turbo inlet.
B9 S5, does your tune change the exhaust valve actuators operation? If not, do you plan on offering a way to keep them open? If I leave them open disconnected, will this reduce power output?
On this platform, I do not believe it interferes with power output. Some vehicles do freak out and go to a limp mode. This platform, to my knowledge, does not. You'll get basically a silent fault code in the ECU. You won't have a check engine light for it, but there'll be a code there.
Do we change the operation at all?
We don't change the operation on it at this point.
Not yet. I mean, we're open to feedback.
That's something we've always done. We bounce back and forth on that. That's one of the things people are kind of polarized on. So it's tough to change it and know everybody wants it that way.
Yeah.
Some guys like still having it in sport mode, but having it a little quieter when they're real low RPM and they're not really getting into it. They're just trying to get around town. Versus generally what we would do is just leave them on or open in sport mode.
Yeah.
Greetings
from Spain. For Europeans B9 S4 TFSI 2018, have you tested your tunes with European fuels?
Have.
Yes, we have. Awesome in the UK is selling and distributing these tunes.
Yep. And these were developed also in conjunction with Racing Line. And tested with vehicles there. They're our partners now.
So if you want to shoot an email to tuning@034motorsport.com, our team can help evaluate your car and make sure that it's compatible. However, you're going to want to take into account the difference between octane ratings between Europe and the US. So R91 is not the same as your,
Right. Yeah. R93 or your 95, whatever. They're not there. You're going to have to look at the knock indexes and make sure that you're comparing across equivalent measurements.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Javad. Thank you. Are there any... Oh, happy birthday, and then are there any updates?
Yeah, where are my updates? Happy birthday. I'm on your good side. Now give me some updates.
I love it. Any updates for the advanced launch control coming to the ZF TCU and Rev 7 ECU coming on the C7 AC?
Yes, there are. It's one of those ones I hesitate to give you hard timeline on.
Yeah,
We've
we don't have
got a lot of testing to do.
We don't have a hard time.
But yeah, we've been working on a bunch of the ZF stuff. Nick has been putting in some good time on that, and we're in a pretty good place right now where we think we've got a good path forward on that. So yes, we are working on it. It will be coming.
Can you speak to the price variations for high flow cats and the justifications for those differences? Yes, I would love to. So there's a couple factors. A big one is generally what is a company's appetite for profit. And so that means if one company, or let's say you have two companies and they both buy it for $1, is one company going to sell it for $2? Is the other company going to sell it for $2.50?
Not to say we can buy these for $1. So.
No, this is making an example. You know, and so what is a company going to mark up? Now, let's just say, thanks to the competitive economic free markets, socialized free market that we experience in, that any one company is not going to be able to be too greedy here. So let's just kind of put that aside. So now you're able to account for these price differences based on the precious metal content of one catalytic converter to another. And this is where the differences can be somewhat perceived. Does one company tell you what the catalytic converter Euro rating is? If they don't, you're probably getting a really crappy, shitty, quote unquote, high flow cat that basically does nothing. Now, our high flow cats are either Euro 3 or Euro 4 specification. Now, again, we sell these for racing and use only. But if you put our high flow cat on your car, you will still be meeting emissions requirements, certainly in the B9, through 2012 to 2015 cars. So these are still really new, clean running cars. Our high flow cat will flow more than the stock cat, so you'll make more power, but you'll still be running virtually clean. Now it's not EPA legal or CARB approved legal, but this is your car will still be running very clean. And this is because what allows a catalytic converter to catalyze is the precious metal content in the coatings. So any good catalytic converter worth using would not have a matrix made from ceramic. Ceramic is old technology. Ceramic melts and degrades very quickly. So modern catalytic converters should be a stainless steel matrix. So that's the minimum. But you could build a catalytic converter with a stainless steel matrix, and it's not going to catalyze anything, but you could sell it as a high flow cat. Now,
it's got a grit in it.
These precious metal coatings is what allows the matrix to begin catalyzing, which means there's still some raw fuel in the exhaust that lights on fire as it goes through the cat, because the cat glows at a certain temperature, and these precious metals allow that function. So again, I know of several examples of high flow cats on the market for the B9 that are much cheaper than ours. And I can assure you that it's because they're just using really cheap cats, and that's why they don't even have any ratings. But we're spending the extra money for a Euro 4 catalytic converter,
minimum, depending on what the
minimum rating. Someone asks, is your cat HJS or GESI? Ours is neither. Ours is 034 Motorsport. We've talked about this before. We don't need to pay HJS. We just simply go to a catalytic converter manufacturer. We tell them what specifications we're looking for, and they can deliver that to us. HJS doesn't have a monopoly on catalytic converters. Now, we are talking to GESI because they have some high flow cats that are 49 state legal. And so that means they've gone through the regulatory process, and they'd like to charge extra money for that. And from our perspective, that would be a worthwhile thing to pay for. HJS is not interesting to us at all. It's a brand of catalytic converter. And again, we know enough about catalytic converters that we can go to a catalytic converter manufacturer and get the exact engineered specified product that we want, without spending a lot of extra money for the HJS brand. Right. But GESI has gone through the regulatory effort, and so that is interesting. And so we are actually talking to them right now, and we would consider bringing out a second line of products that specifically cater to people looking to run, somewhat. They're not going to be legal in California, but they would be 49 state legal in most cases.
Yeah, and we're testing these where there's going to be some interesting considerations on the calibration side because they are it'll live in a land kind of between stage 1 and stage 2 where we're not going to be doing anything more towards a racing application like the normal stage 2 stuff. All of the ECU testing, emissions, everything is still intact, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, we'll have more information on that when we get there. But we are testing them.
But not all catalytic converters are the same,
No.
and the cheap ones are just cheap. I honestly, I wouldn't waste my money on the cheap ones.
And that's just focusing on the brick. Never mind the construction, where a lot of our stuff these days we do castings for
Stainless steel casting.
Yeah, then they're high quality metal castings to really get those transitions right, to place that catalyst element where it should be, as opposed to moving everything way downstream like some applications because it's easier to manufacture out of a off the shelf steel tube kind of manufacturing. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
And then all of our high flow cats have, for like the B9 have this really beautiful heat shielding that's actually welded onto it. And it's a embossed stainless steel outer with a fiberglass insulation underneath it. That kind of thing was popularized in some pretty high level racing years ago. And we've been able to employ that on all of our newer high flow cats for like the B9 and newer cars. So yeah, I mean, our cats are good. They're definitely more expensive, but they're cheaper than like the HJS stuff that's out there. And again, that's just a name brand. I wouldn't waste my money. I would just make sure I'm getting a high quality product that has a specific rating.
Right. Yeah, the only time it really makes sense to me, at least for that price tag, would be if it comes with the emissions.
Exactly, and that's where the GESI cats are. That's why we're talking to them.
Yep.
But there's no reason we would talk to HJS.
Just to follow up, just exhaust related question: would there be smoke coming out of my exhaust if I delete the mid-resonator and straight pipe it? No, that's not going to change anything coming out the tailpipe. It's literally just a sound acoustic change.
Exhaust only.
It's not going
changes
to
the sound.
Yeah, the smoke's not going.
No.
Getting trapped in your any resonators or anything like that.
B9 S5, any update on the E85 content analyzer from 034? Do you plan on including a fuel line so we don't need to splice the OEM line? I don't know if we've talked about that much, so maybe Mark.
Well, if you take a look, it's tricky to supply lines simply because they generally are different from S5 to S4 to Q5 to
we'd have to have specific.
So we'd have to have a lot of different kits
Yeah.
To accommodate that.
But the once you cut the line, it's also easy to just stick a coupler or a union in there if you take the sensor out. Yeah. But we're talking about carrying those fuelet gauge kits, so I think we'll be adding those to the website soon. A couple more. Intercoolers, tube and fin or bar and plate, which one do you guys prefer and why?
It's a good one.
This is a good question. So it depends what we're doing. So if we're building, say like a drag racing car or a dyno car, which we have actually built cars designed to compete on the dyno, and so we actually had different intercooler setups for the various events or conditions that we were driving the car in. So we would go to the Eurotuner Grand Prix, later became the European Car Grand Prix, and that was a kind of a magazine shootout for tuners, and we would dyno, drag race, and road course the car. And so we became notorious for winning this event every year for years. And we would prepare the car for each event, and we had different setups. So thankfully, the events were over 3 days, and so we would show up with the car ready to prepare for dyno, and then the event would end, say, in the afternoon, and we would spend the rest of the afternoon swapping the car to the drag racing spec, which was day 2, and then so on and so forth. But on the dyno, we would always run a big, heavy bar and plate intercooler.
Yep.
The reason we would do that is that bar and plate intercoolers are made from, as the name suggests, bars and plates of billet aluminum, which, as you can imagine, bars and plates of aluminum are pretty heavy. And so you typically end up with a core that's at least double, but maybe up to 5 or 6 times heavier than a corresponding tube and fin. Now, if you just, take the hyperbole, tubes and fins, they sound pretty light. Fish have fins, and birds' feathers are made from tubes, and so are like airplanes. So it's a lighter construction in tube and fin. But the difference, let's say you can make both bar and plate and tube and fin intercoolers flow the same amount. The difference then becomes the thermal mass. Now, bar and plate, because it's heavier, it means there's more material. They're both made out of aluminum. But you might have 2 to 5 times more aluminum in a bar and plate intercooler. And so that means you have a lot of thermal capacity. So that aluminum has, the more mass it has, the more heat it can hold. That's just how it works, right? I mean, it's like, heating up a thin Teflon pan, coated pan, and a cast iron pan. Cast iron pan is going to take a lot longer to heat up, but once it does, it's going to hold that heat. Now that's good for drag racing because you have a short amount of time where you're putting a ton of heat into the intercooler, and half that time you're not going very fast. So that heat has to go somewhere, and if it can't go to the air, it goes into the aluminum. And then as you get to the end of the drag race, it doesn't matter, but now that intercooler is filled with heat, and then it can shed that heat slowly as you come back and circle. But on a racetrack, one, you don't want to put a bunch of weight on the nose of a race car. And then two, you want that heat to go into the intercooler and shed quickly because you don't need a lot of thermal capacity. The car is moving. You just simply want an intercooler that's designed to be the right size to pull the heat out of the compression heat that's generated from the turbo and shed it to the ambient air as quickly as possible. And so that's how we decide. So if you're making this decision, I would say for a street-driven car that you occasionally go to the track with, you're going to want tube and fin. And that's why all the new intercoolers that we're developing right now are all tube and fin.
Yep.
Bar and plate intercoolers are pretty easy and cheap to make because you just stack bars and plates until you get to the size you want, and you're done. But then you're kind of stuck with a heavy intercooler that sheds heat more slowly, that has a lot of thermal capacity, and that's not always what you need when you're driving.
Yeah, and you can see this. I mean, it's we always look at the data and stuff when we're testing all this, but bar and plate stuff's always a much gradual climb, more gradual climb, for temperature increases as well as decreases. So you're, depending on the application, you may end up with a much hotter average temperature potentially than you would, especially on a racetrack, road course kind of situation. You might with a tube and fin, which is able to much more quickly recover, and you'll see more of an oscillation in those temperatures versus kind of a plateau where it just sits.
And this is why I'm almost always factory intercoolers are tube and fin, and you look at race cars too, they're tube and fin. For all the reasons we just described. But it's funny, we have an air compressor out in the shop, and it has a nice bar and plate intercooler on it. So, there you go. All right, we got another quick second. Someone says, for a B9 RS5, could you weigh in on catalyst downpipes on stage 3 hybrid turbos? Is there a benefit in having no catalyst for the added exhaust flow? Obviously, race gas and water meth is detrimental to the catalyst, but what about just for hybrid turbos? On the B9 RS5, you have 2 cat bricks that are about 6 inches in diameter. I would argue that at any kind of sane, reasonable power level, there's going to be no.
Yeah, even at hybrid turbos, when you're looking at each of those bricks independently,
it's a lot of
flow. If it's a well-designed catalyst.
Our cats, I would say, flow at least 500 horsepower each without any restriction. Yeah. So until you're over 1,000 horsepower, you're not going to benefit from a test pipe. And then again, you're going to be, even when the high flow cats start becoming restrictive, it's not a brick wall, right? So you just slowly start losing power once the restriction sets in, and you have, the environmental benefit, the livable day to day without the noxious fumes and the black soot all over the back of
Right.
your car. Catalytic converters have gotten really good, so there's really no need to ditch
we're in
them.
a pretty good place these days.
It's really a shame to run test pipes on any of these cars, because there's really no real benefit.
And as far as like race gas and water meth detrimental, that is going to depend on the element of the catalyst. We have
Yeah, it
not
does.
really seen that as the
We-
case. I mean, it
we
depends on
see-
what race gas you're running, but if it's something that gnarly, generally you're getting into like a leaded fuel, which
Yeah.
you do not want to run through your
O2 sensors.
well, that and your direct injection systems either. So
Yeah.
generally the stuff that's compatible with the DI motors is going to be in a, it's going to work well with a well-designed catalyst.
Yeah. We like high flow cats here, and that's what we recommend. Good ones.
Yes.
Cheap, crappy
Yes.
ones. All right, I think that's all the time we have for today. We have a few more questions that we'll save for next week, but thanks for joining us, and we really appreciate it, and hope many of you get to enjoy our new Stage 2 B9 tune, and it's available now. So thanks, guys. Cheers.